Mother of 4 charged with malicious damage to property. Guyana News. A 38-year-old single mother of 4, Nia Favorite, has been placed on $50,000 bail after appearing at the Georgetown Magistrates Court on charges of malicious damage to property. The incident allegedly occurred on August 31, 2024, at Rose Mary Lane, South Cummingsburg, Georgetown. Favorite pleaded not guilty to the charge after it was presented to her by Acting Chief Magistrate Faith McGusty. She is accused of damaging a 32-inch television valued at $65,998 and a showcase worth $280,456, both owned by Peddle Roberts. Magistrate McGusty granted bail and scheduled Favorite's next court appearance for March 5, 2025. President Irfan Ali responds to claims by Terrence Campbell. In a recent post, President Irfan Ali addressed allegations made by Terrence Campbell, who claimed that Ali approached him to be his prime ministerial candidate for the 2020 general and regional elections. President Ali categorically denied this assertion, stating, "This is completely false." He clarified that while they have engaged in numerous discussions on political matters in the past, he never offered Campbell the position of prime ministerial candidate for the People's Progressive Party/Civic, PPP/C. Ali emphasized that during their time in opposition, he communicated to Campbell and others that the PPP/C is the only national party with pro-people and pro-Guyana policies. The president also remarked that the vice president and general secretary of the party engage in factual and political responses rather than personal attacks. He highlighted a growing belief among some individuals in the country that they can criticize the PPP and its leadership without anticipating a response. Woman on bail for verbal abuse. Guyana News. A 23-year-old woman, Latavia December, has been placed on $10,000 bail after appearing at the Georgetown Magistrates Court on a charge of using abusive language. The incident in question occurred on January 27, 2025, in Agricola, where December allegedly directed verbal abuse towards Thessa Monasar. During the proceedings, December pleaded not guilty to the charge as it was read to her by Acting Chief Magistrate Faith McGusty. Monasar testified that December had repeatedly abused her and expressed a need for protection. She highlighted that December is related to her sister, who resides on the lower flat of her house, leading to frequent visits that often result in altercations. "Every time she comes, she does cuss me out, and she does damage my property," Monasar stated. In response, Magistrate McGusty granted bail to December, emphasizing that she must have no contact with Monasar. The magistrate cautioned that any failure to comply with this condition would constitute a breach of the bond to keep the peace, which could result in the revocation of her bail. Hire car driver remanded for robbery at Corentine Chinese restaurant. Newsroom. Dayal Narayan, a 35-year-old hire car driver, has been remanded to prison following charges related to a robbery that occurred at a Chinese restaurant in No. 67 Village, Corentine, Burbus. Narayan appeared at the Wim Magistrates Court before Magistrate Tuana Hardy, who denied him bail due to the serious nature of the crime. He was not required to enter a plea, and he is scheduled to return to court on February 21, 2025. The robbery took place late Wednesday night when businessman Lockridge Singh and fisherman Vervash Ramdhari were dining at the restaurant. Singh reported that a masked assailant, armed with a gun, ordered both men to lie flat on the ground during the incident. Significant amounts of valuables were stolen, including jewelry worth approximately $4,595,000 from Singh, as well as cash totaling $244,000 in Guyanese currency. Ramdhari's wallet, containing $223,000, was also taken by the assailants. Law enforcement continues to investigate the incident as the community grapples with the implications of this alarming crime. Attorney General Mohabir Anil Nandlall SC MP questions Nigel Hughes on state land acquisition. In a recent social media post, Attorney General Mohabir Anil Nandlall SC MP expressed concerns regarding Mr. Nigel Hughes' explanations for acquiring 2 large parcels of state land. Nandlall pointed out discrepancies in Hughes' claims, suggesting that the process he described does not align with the established procedures at the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission, GLSC. Nandlall detailed that the correct procedure involves the execution of affidavits by both parties to transfer and accept the leasehold interest in the land. Once the GLSC approves the transfer, an endorsement is made on the lease document, negating the need for a new survey or lease, as the land would have already been surveyed under the original lease. He raised the possibility that either an unusual procedure was followed for Hughes or that his assertions are inaccurate. Furthermore, Nandlall urged Hughes to clarify whether he was a director or corporate secretary for a company that acquired 10 acres of land at LBI from the state, stating that this simple question does not require a formal inquiry or investigation to be answered. Opposition condemns PPP's attempts to intimidate Mr. Terence Campbell. The opposition firmly stands in support of Mr. Terence Campbell, condemning the People's Progressive Party, PPP, regime's attempts to intimidate and victimize him in their pursuit of total control over Guyanese society. We call upon all decent citizens of Guyana to unite in denouncing these reprehensible actions by the PPP and to support Mr. Campbell, who, as a member of the Natural Resource Fund's Investment Committee, is fulfilling his constitutional duty to ensure that the country's oil revenue is invested wisely and protected from the corrupt practices of the Ali/Jagdeo administration. It is evident that the regime aims to silence Mr. Campbell to prevent him from exposing government corruption and cronyism. We affirm that he is acting in the best interest of the people, and we commend his courage and determination. Attacking Mr. Campbell is an attack on the opposition and all honest, law-abiding citizens of Guyana. We urge for calm and good sense to prevail to avert any damaging consequences arising from these actions. Furthermore, we advocate for the depoliticization of the Guyana police force, urging it to return to a professional institution that ensures accountability, where no one is above the law. Those within the corrupt PPP regime who violate the law must be investigated and held accountable. As elections approach, we alert the public that the PPP may resort to creating political and racial tensions in a desperate attempt to boost their declining support. The opposition will actively expose and resist these tactics while protecting the rights and freedoms of all citizens. We encourage Guyanese to join us in the fight against PPP corruption, incompetence, and divisiveness. Driver in horrific accident rescued by emergency medical technicians. On February 6, 2025, a truck driver was rescued by emergency medical technicians, EMTs, following a severe accident on Lusignan Public Road, East Bank, Demerara. The quick and commendable actions of EMTs Ms. Phoebe Scott and Ms. Lyncha Pyle played a crucial role in saving the driver's life. Around 11:25 a.m., ambulance number 23 and crew, along with water tender number 102 from Melanie Fire Station, responded to the emergency call. Upon arrival, EMT Scott swiftly climbed onto the truck to initiate a rescue operation while also providing medical care to the driver, who was later identified as 28-year-old Atash Singh. He was successfully removed from the vehicle and transported to Georgetown Public Hospital while conscious. The accident occurred when Mr. Singh lost control of his truck, colliding with a car and a house, resulting in significant damage to both. He sustained severe injuries, including avulsion to the right side of his face and lacerations to his right arm. The car's driver, 31-year-old Jamila Kelvin, also suffered abrasions and shoulder pain. The collision caused extensive damage to a two-story concrete building owned by Bibi Navia Shafi at Lot 2B Area H, Lusignan Public Road. Fortunately, there were no fatalities. In light of this incident, the Guyana Fire Service urges all drivers to adhere to the 5 Cs of driving: care, caution, consideration, common sense, and courtesy. Following these principles can help maintain road safety and reduce the occurrence of accidents. Guyana extradites fugitive to Canada. In a notable achievement for international cooperation, the Cooperative Republic of Guyana has successfully extradited a fugitive to Canada, underscoring a significant milestone in bilateral relations and collaborative efforts against transnational crime. On February 6, 2025, Guyana extradited Harry Nareen Rajkumar to Canada, where he faces multiple criminal charges. This marks the first successful extradition between the two nations, reinforcing their commitment to pursuing justice across borders. Rajkumar was apprehended by the Guyana Police Force, GPF, following an Interpol Red Notice. He had been evading Canadian law enforcement since May 2019, but was eventually captured in Guyana. After being committed to prison, Rajkumar waived his right to an extradition hearing and consented to return to Canada. The charges he faces include attempted murder in violation of the Canadian Criminal Code, aggravated assault in violation of the Canadian Criminal Code, Ottawa jurisdiction. Following his arrest, Canadian authorities submitted an extradition request, which was processed according to Guyanese legal procedures. Rajkumar appeared before Acting Chief Magistrate Faith McGusty, where he formally agreed to the extradition. The prosecution team included Ms. Lisa Cave, Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions, Ms. Ormella Gladstone, Treaty Officer at the Ministry of Home Affairs, and Sergeant Stephen Hines from the Major Crimes Unit, along with other law enforcement officers. This successful extradition showcases Guyana's unwavering commitment to international law enforcement cooperation and its dedication to ensuring justice is served, regardless of geographical boundaries. It also sets the stage for future collaborations between Guyana and Canada in tackling cross-border criminal activities. Opposition criticizes GECOM chair's proposal on digital fingerprint capture. The opposition has expressed concerns regarding the recent proposal by GECOM chair Claudette Singh to hire a technical expert for advice on implementing digital fingerprint capture for voter registration, albeit only after the next general and regional elections. They welcomed the acknowledgement of the need for expert input, but questioned Singh's conclusion that such technology could not be implemented for the 2025 elections, citing her lack of technical expertise. The opposition labeled this proposal as inadequate and unacceptable, accusing the GECOM chair of acting as a biased arbiter rather than seeking consensus. They argued that her actions have led to growing doubts about her competence, integrity, and courage. In reference to a previous press conference on January 24, 2025, the opposition recalled their critiques of Justice Singh's decision against using electronic biometrics in the upcoming elections. They highlighted her inexperience in biometrics technology and project management, emphasizing the necessity for GECOM to seek proposals from expert firms to explore using fingerprint biometrics for registration and voting. They asserted that this was essential for ensuring a shared understanding of the time frame and other related issues. The opposition reiterated their stance, stating, "The integrity and credibility of the upcoming elections should not be compromised by the GECOM chair's arbitrary decisions, especially given her limited technical knowledge." Her ruling against the use of biometrics was made without sufficient technical input from relevant experts, rendering it deficient and unacceptable. GECOM must promptly hire qualified experts to facilitate informed decisions regarding the use of biometrics for registration and voting in the next election. The opposition remains firm in their demands for a fair and informed approach to the electoral process. 4 remanded for armed robbery in Berbice. Newsroom. 4 individuals have been charged and remanded to prison in connection with an armed robbery that targeted 31-year-old businessman Ravindra Somai, known as Buxton, who runs a tint shop in Belvedere, Corentine, Berbice. The accused are Ian Clark, 34, a carpenter from Lot 89 No. 2 Village, East Cange. Michael Embrace, 40, a mason from Lot 181 Fort Ordnance Housing Scheme. Farad Khan, 24, a laborer from Lot 2 Firish Village. Diane Mahaz, 38, a hairdresser from Canefield, East Cange. They appeared before the Albion Magistrates Court, where Magistrate Michelle Matthias presided. The incident in question occurred on January 31, 2025, when Somai and 2 others were targeted during the robbery at his place of business. The accused were not required to enter pleas at this stage. Police Prosecutor Sergeant Mark Stevens informed the court that the case file is still incomplete and will need to be submitted to the Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP, for further evaluation. He requested an extension of 4 weeks to finalize the documentation. Khan's attorney, Rodwell Jugmohan, argued for bail, citing reliance on Khan's caution statement, but Magistrate Matthias denied the request. The accused were remanded to prison, with their next court appearance scheduled for February 28, 2025. Reports indicate that around 7:15 p.m., 2 masked men armed with handguns approached the shop on a black and red XR motorcycle. They threatened Somai and his workers, demanding valuables. During the robbery, Somai was struck on the head with a handgun and was forced to hand over his jewelry, which included 2 gold chains and a gold band, along with $400,000 in cash and a Samsung S22 Plus phone valued at $120,000. After the theft, the assailants fled the scene on their motorcycle. Mahapal renews call for cancellation of Critics Pump Station contract. News source Guyana. Following Vice President Barrett Jagdeo's denial of awareness regarding social media commentator Mikhail, Guyanese critic, Rodriguez receiving an $870.5 million contract for a pump station, the opposition is once again raising concerns about the contract award. The project has been stalled for several months, despite Rodriguez receiving over $150 million in advance payments. Critics question how Tepui Incorporated, where Rodriguez serves as director, was awarded the contract given the company's lack of experience and its status as a non-lowest bidder. Rodriguez has publicly claimed to have close ties with senior members of the PPP, including the vice president. Like the critic thing that I get vilified for sometimes, I found out he was awarded a contract after the contract was awarded because I did not go to cabinet, Jagdeo stated to reporters. In response, Opposition Member of Parliament Ganesh Mahapal emphasized that the contract should have been terminated long ago. He asserted that it is evident TEPUI did not undergo the necessary evaluation process, raising further concerns about the award. From the outset, we have said openly that this pump station should have never been awarded to the TEPUI Group owned and operated by the Guyanese critic. We are not against him entering contract bidding, but we oppose awarding contracts that do not meet the requirements, Mahapal stated. The Public Procurement Commission has reviewed the contract and found multiple violations in its awarding. Over a year since the contract was granted and with more than $150 million paid, the project is reportedly only about 10% complete. Mahapal pointed out, what is materializing before our eyes is his inability to complete this contract. The work is technical and does not fit within his scope. Had he been evaluated properly and not awarded the contract, we would have had no issue. The opposition has consistently accused the PPP government of favoring family, friends, and allies with lucrative contracts. Chief Justice dismisses case by Mocha Arcadia squatters. Newsroom: the last 6 squatters of Mocha Arcadia, East Bank Demerara, have lost their legal battle against the government, as Chief Justice Roxanne George dismissed their claims on Friday. In her ruling, Justice George determined that the squatters, who refused to vacate lands designated for the Heroes Highway project, had no legal claim to the property. The land in question, located at Block X Plantation Hearsteling, is state-owned and crucial for the construction of this vital infrastructure. The squatters had filed lawsuits in September 2023, asserting prescriptive rights to the land and seeking over $200 million in damages for alleged violations of their constitutional rights, including protection against inhumane treatment and deprivation of property. However, Justice George ruled that they failed to provide substantial evidence to support their claims. The court emphasized that the squatters did not establish prescriptive rights to the property before the enactment of the Title to Land, Prescription and Limitation Amendment Act 2011 and could not prove their alleged large-scale operations on the land. Additionally, the squatters had received multiple notices from the Central Housing and Planning Authority, CHPA, to relocate, yet they were the only group among over 150 families who refused to leave, remaining on the property at their own risk. The ruling also dismissed the squatters' claims against GECOM, Guyana Sugar Corporation, stating that GECOM had no ownership rights over the land, which had been transferred to the National Industrial and Commercial Investments Limited, NISL, in 2017. Justice George awarded significant costs to the Attorney General's Chambers, CHPA, and GECOM, which the squatters are required to pay by June 3, 2025. This case highlights ongoing issues related to squatting on public lands and its implications for national development projects. The Chief Justice's decision sets a precedent for future cases involving similar circumstances and the treatment of individuals occupying government lands. Legal representation for the Attorney General's Chambers included Attorney General Mohabir Anil Nandlall SCMP and Deputy Solicitor General Shosana V. Lal, among others. The CHPA was represented by Darshan Ramdhani KC, while GECOM was represented by Kamal Ramkaran and Rafiq Khan SC. The squatters were represented by attorneys Vivian M. Williams and Lyndon Amsterdam. Government will not tolerate reckless vilification of public office holders. On February 6, 2025, General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party, PPP, Dr. Bharat Jagdeo, made it clear that the government will not tolerate the reckless vilification of individuals in public office aimed at gaining cheap political points. Addressing accusations directed at several public figures during a press conference at Freedom House, Dr. Jagdeo emphasized the lack of evidence supporting these claims and their derogatory impact. He specifically mentioned the resignation of former Chief Executive Officer of the Central Housing and Planning Authority, CHPA, Sherwin Greaves, who stepped down citing personal reasons. This decision followed various social media posts raising concerns about a property Greaves allegedly acquired in New York, suggesting potential violations of the U.S. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, FCPA. Dr. Jagdeo reiterated the government's zero-tolerance policy for misconduct in public office. He stated, Sherwin Greaves will have to give credible answers for the acquisition of any of his properties. If he broke the law, he must face the consequences. That is our position. He noted that the government had engaged with Greaves and was assured that all his transactions were legal and transparent. Greaves, according to Dr. Jagdeo, expressed that he could no longer handle the vilification he faced, despite his significant contributions to the government's housing initiatives, which aim to allocate 50,000 house lots. He has helped thousands of people. But they want to run him down because they perceive him close to the PPP, he added. The General Secretary contrasted Greaves' situation with that of former Assistant Police Commissioner Calvin Brutus, stating that the latter warranted investigation due to substantial evidence of misconduct. "We are not going to run down people based on social media posts, especially from people who are crooked," Dr. Jagdeo asserted. He condemned the pattern of public vilification perpetrated by operatives of the PNC/APNU/AFC, who, he claimed, have historically aimed to malign individuals associated with the PPP. "The same tax evaders and these crooks, they're so slimy, have been running him down for weeks and then express surprise when he resigns," he stated. Dr. Jagdeo concluded by emphasizing that public vilification does not constitute reasonable grounds for investigation and criticized opposition figures for their impulsive attacks on public officials. Hughes welcomes probe into his land acquisitions, calls for investigation of Ogle and Heroes Highway allocations. News source Guyana. Nigel Hughes, leader of the Alliance for Change, AFC, has expressed his willingness to undergo a full investigation into his land acquisitions while simultaneously calling for a similar probe into the sale of prime state lands in Ogle and along the Heroes Highway. After raising questions about the land sales at Ogle and along the Heroes Highway, Vice President Barrett Jagdeo presented documents indicating that Hughes had acquired several acres of leased lands during the coalition government's tenure. Hughes clarified that these were provisional leases and that the lease agreements have been stalled. I absolutely welcome and encourage a full investigation into my acquisition of lands on the left bank of the Essequibo River in the vicinity of the mouth of the Grit Creek, Hughes stated. He elaborated that in January 2016, he purchased 20 acres of land for $2 million from Simon Monroe, who had been farming in the area. At that time, Monroe had not secured the final lease from the Guyana Lands and Survey Commission. Hughes pointed out that although he eventually obtained a provisional lease for 50 acres, he has waited 8 years for the final lease to be issued, hindering his agricultural business plans with his partners. In response to Vice President Jagdeo's accusations that Hughes facilitated the securing of commercial lands at Ogle for a Trinidadian company at a lower rate than a controversial real estate developer, Hughes denied being a shareholder in any company involved and stated that he has never engaged in negotiations for commercial lands in Ogle or Earl's Court. "I am more than willing to undergo any investigation, but more importantly, let the country of Guyana know who has been awarded their lands, what rates they have been awarded at, and the conditions under which those lands have been allocated," he said. Hughes insisted that the investigation should also cover the allocations of land at Ogle and along the Heroes Highway. He emphasized the need for transparency regarding national lands distributed under licenses and legal documents. Earlier this week, the Chief Executive Officer of the Central Housing and Planning Authority, Sherwin Greaves, resigned amid questions regarding his approval of land sales for Ed Ahmad and his property purchases in New York from a company linked to Ahmad.